Am I starting or you?
I'll go ahead and start just as soon. Okay, looks like we're good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's author talk. My name is Demi, and I work for the Thompson-Nicola Regional Library. And I am pleased to welcome Janet Whitehead from the Kamloops Society of the Written Arts, and also our guest author, Roslyn Muir. If you are joining us today on YouTube, feel free to punch any comments or questions that you have for Roslyn into the comments, and I will make sure that those get to her. And if you miss this while we are live, it is always recorded and saved to our YouTube page, so you can see it there as well. So without further ado, I will hand things over to Janet.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you. And hello, Roslyn. It's so nice to have you here tonight.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and I'd first like to mention this is sponsored by the Thompson-Nicola Regional Library and the Kamloops Society of the Written Arts. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we're gathered on the unceded and traditional territory of the Secwepemc people. And it's a beautiful place to be. And we have Roslyn Muir tonight, and I'm going to share her bio, which is so fun. So our talk tonight is from film to fiction. Roslyn is Vancouver based, right, Roslyn, now?
Mm-hmm.
And she's an author and screenwriter, and she is presenting her middle grade fantasy book. Oh, and I was going to look up, is it Chimera? Apprentice, Chimera. Roslyn reflects on the differences between writing film and fiction and encourages writers to jump genres. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her here. She's born in Scotland, grew up in Vancouver, and often uses the similar landscapes of both countries in her stories. Roslyn's an award-winning screenwriter who writes YA stories, family drama, and thrillers. She was a writer on the global CBS one-hour drama Ransom, created by Frank Spotnitz, Man in High Castle. Roslyn also written several TV movies that have aired in Canada, the US, and Europe. Washed Away, Stranger in the House, and Reluctant Witness, to name a few. She also wrote and produced the dramatic feature film The Birdwatcher, directed by Siobhan Devine. Roslyn has Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from UBC, where she's also an adjunct professor in screenwriting. And when she's not writing, she teaches at local film schools in Vancouver. So I'm just...
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you and welcome. And with that, I'll let you begin.
Well, I want to let you know that this is actually my first library talk, and it's a huge thrill for me to have my book in the library as well, the Kamloops Library. So I think for a writer, that's probably one of the greatest things, especially when you have so many fond memories of libraries, and I still go to the library constantly for my books. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read.
Glad you're here.
Thanks. So I am going to read from the Chimeras Apprentice. Here it is here. And this is a story that is a middle grade book. It's a fantasy adventure. And I'm just going to dive right in, and then I'll talk a little bit about it.
Thank you.
Chapter 1. There was a soft rustling coming from the box in the center of my project's display, and I was doing my best to talk over it. I proudly gestured to my life cycle of the rat poster I had taped to the chalkboard behind me. It was a work of art. No one at the time knew it, I continued. The rats carried fleas infected by the Black Plague, a deadly disease. My fingers began to sweat and stick to the plastic report cover. As a result, rats have a bad reputation. 2 centuries ago, Rattus norvegicus, the Norwegian or brown rat, was brought to North America on ships and is now the most common mammal on Earth. However, rats are intelligent creatures that have colonized the world and refuse to go away. Thump, thump, thump. A look of bewilderment crossed Mrs. Whittlestone's face as she watched from her desk. Could she hear it? Her black hair was pulled back in a too-tight bun, her pen poised to take notes. Tap, tap, tap. Her pen hit the desk and she offered me a kind, get-on-with-it smile. I wiped my damp hand on my jeans, took a deep breath, and kept reading, allowing the emotion in my voice to grow with each word. Rats spread throughout North America as quickly as its immigrants built houses, farms, and businesses. Thump, thump, thump. It's almost like we belong together, human and rat. It was my favorite sentence. Then the box jumped, and there was a snicker from someone at the back of the class. I ignored them both. Human and rat, I said again, louder. Mrs. Whittlestone hiccuped. The box moved again. My classmates craned their necks to ogle it. I glanced at my paper, but had lost my place on the page. Thump, thump, thump. Kyra, what is in the, began Mrs. Whittlestone, but it was too late. Out of the box burst two gigantic wild gray rats, Norwegian browns, their long wormy tails flailing back and forth. I'd worked so hard to capture the two most perfect specimens I could find. Early in the morning, I baited a cardboard box with tuna and set it in the alley behind the school. At first, all I caught was the neighborhood tomcat, which snarled and hissed at me. Then I filled the box with more tuna and set it near a garbage can. It worked. As the rats raced towards the door and a screaming Mrs. Whittlestone, a couple of things became clear. One, I should have used a better box. Two, the rats were memorable, maybe too memorable. And that's why I'm suspended, I explained to my mom later that day. You brought live rats to school? Real rats? Do you know how dangerous that was? They're disgusting. Mom glanced suspiciously around the living room of our tidy but rundown apartment, as if expecting a rat to appear from under the couch. Where did you find them? You said I should get a hobby. I meant painting or knitting, she said. Knitting? Really? How many droopy socks does a person need? Why are you so obsessed with these creatures? She asked. I shrugged. Obsessed? Harsh. Then Mrs. Whittlestone slapped the big red panic button on the wall, and Mr. Crenshaw, the principal, rushed in just as she fainted. Kyra Murch, what have you done? Crenshaw had bellowed as he fanned Mrs. Whittlestone's ashen face. While my frightened classmates screamed and jumped up on their desks, I had to suppress a grin. Those incredible rats had escaped the box all by themselves. Using their sharp teeth, they chewed through the thick cardboard, and then they jumped off the table and flew through the air like birds. As they scrambled down the hallway to freedom, I really wished they'd taken me with them. Only one person hadn't seemed mad at me, Mrs. Glipp, the principal's 100-year-old office administrator. Rumor had it she was the only one who really ran the school. Earlier, while I sat in Mr. Crenshaw's office awaiting my punishment, she had peered over her heavy green-framed glasses to greet me warmly. Her purple candy floss hair gleamed under the office lights, her possum face bright pink. Are you listening to me? Mom asked. Huh? I blinked. Kyra! Mom's face was the exact same shade of pink as she flicked her mane of black curls over her shoulder. Her sparkling green eyes turned dull, gray with anger. Rats are filthy, disease-ridden vermin. No, they're smart and they have families and morals and they're so cool. This would never have happened if you'd let me have one for a pet. Kyra, she stood there a moment, her mouth wide as her anger bubbled over. She finally spoke in her stern, you're in big trouble voice. Clean your room and do your laundry. Just because you're suspended doesn't mean you're on vacation. The cell phone rang, its siren song calling Mom back to her home office where she did computer accounting. But as she left the living room, she mumbled under her breath, you're just like your father. I am? Good, I blurted. She turned back to me with a look of horrible disappointment, and I felt instantly ashamed. But it was kind of true. After a few moments of feeling like a super big jerk, I crept down the hallway towards my room. I paused at her office door, unsure whether it was too late to apologize. I pushed the door open a bit and wrinkled my nose as the sweet rose air freshener spray she loved wafted over to me. Mom had the cell phone tucked under her chin and fingers flying across the computer keyboard, working hard to keep it all together. It wasn't easy without Dad around, and now I had disappointed her. Suspended. Only the bad kids at school got suspended. I bit my lip, suppressing a grin. I never did anything bad. In fact, I went out of my way to stay out of trouble. I closed my bedroom door softly behind me. My room was a disaster. My rat research was everywhere. Practice posters littered the floor. Research books and note cards covered my bed. Maybe Mom was right. My rat report had become an obsession. I swept everything onto the floor and threw myself onto the bed, mad at the injustice of it all. If the teacher hadn't been so afraid of rats, if the rats hadn't escaped, if the other kids hadn't screamed so loud, I would have aced the project. Maybe. The hamster calendar loomed above me on the wall. Glittery stars and big arrows and felt pen pointed to the day I would shine. Today. But it had all gone wrong. I just wanted to be good at something. What was wrong with that? I ran a finger over the glittery stars. Tomorrow was my 13th birthday. I used to look forward to birthdays, but today I'd had a nagging feeling something bad was going to happen. And it did. Rats.
Thank you.
So that's the beginning of Kyra's adventure before she gets swept away to another world and she meets some new friends and becomes the Chimeras Apprentice.
Yeah, well, I'm ordering it. I loved it. I don't know where you're going next, but just the way you've written that, I could see the whole thing, and I'm going, and it just made me think, like, when's this becoming a film?
Well, that's a good segue because I actually wrote it. I initially envisioned it as a film before I wrote it, because by the time I started writing this, which was actually 10 years ago, I had already started to write screenplays and was pretty heavily involved in that. So I envisioned this as a movie, but it's one of those things that I guess like Lord of the Rings or something, it's such a big story, like it's going to be a trilogy, and it's a big world, so it needs a big budget, and it's not the thing that you can get made as the first thing you're writing and pitching out to local producers. It's kind of going to be, hopefully a big Hollywood film. So for me, that was a bit of a stumbling block, because I was like, well, for fantasy, you really need to write the book first. And I totally had no idea how to write a book. And but the story kept building in my head, and the character was really coming to life. And a lot of that was due to the fact that you can see here on the cover, Kyra is actually played here by my daughter, Erica. That's her face on the cover. So she was a lot of kind of my muse for the character of Kyra when she was little. And just because she was just so adventurous and fun and all that. Anyway, so I decided that I would try to write it as a novel. And at the time, I had applied to go to UBC to do an MFA, even though my plan when I was there was I was thinking, well, I was going to do a film as my thesis. And but when I was talking to my thesis advisor, and I had read her an excerpt from very, very early on chapter of the book, and she was like, well, why don't you do something different? Why don't you try and write it as a novel for your thesis, because you've already written screenplays, so it's not as much of a challenge. So she kind of talked me into it. So I wrote the first draft then as my thesis. And so I finished it in 2012. And then over the years, it just kind of got put aside, because also while I was doing my thesis at UBC, I also wrote a screenplay, The Birdwatcher. So that was kind of starting to go into production and get be moving forward. So the book had to be put aside, and also because it was also this big thing in my mind that is just like, it's just never going to be made, because I'm not a novelist, I'm a screenwriter. And the thing is with screenwriting is that it's actually, it's a very lean type of writing. You don't have to, dive deep into the character's mind and use, florally prose and it's all got to be very visual and on the page. And so I think that did influence me when I was writing the book, because I kind of structured it like a movie, and because I could visually see it all happening, it sort of, it really did follow a 3-act feature film structure and lots of plot points along the way. So it was kind of a weird amalgamation of my screenwriting talents, I guess you could call them. But I think it's kind of an interesting thing is to cross genres. And I know a lot of people actually do it. And I was always quite amazed. Like a lot of people, they would write novels first and then they develop it into a film. But I had sort of started with scripts before I got into novels. And now I quite enjoy it. Like I really do enjoy writing prose. A part of the fear of writing the novel was actually sort of because of my upbringing. I mean, I was an avid book reader, and but I always had this thing that I never thought of myself as a writer. I was never like some writers. I always hear when I listen to writers, they're always like, yeah, when I was 5, I was writing books, and all I wanted to do ever was write. And I never had that feeling in my life until much later. And so it was kind of like, I felt like I was a little bit illiterate because I never graduated high school, and I only got into university like when I was in my mid-20s because I was a mature student. So I hadn't really developed any of my writing kind of chops. And I think getting into screenwriting was sort of accidental. It was one of those like really superficial things where all my friends were doing it. And I thought, well, I could try it. And, film is sexy. And in like the, late 90s in Vancouver, and, film is really big. Like it was really becoming a huge industry here. And so that was the reason I even started writing, was just because my friends were doing it. So it was kind of an odd kind of, and I recognize that from this side of the century, that I really was not, it wasn't that burning desire. But it's the strange thing about it is that I've grown into being a writer. Like now I have that burning desire. Now I can't close the laptop. Now I wake up with the ideas and want to that's all I want to do. So I don't know whether I created the monster or if it was just inside me all the time. But I definitely have a much deeper sense of, amazement at that people can even write this stuff, but that the heft of craft, how you really do need to work on your craft in any genre, whether it be a book or a movie. You have to put in those practice hours for sure. The themes in most of the stories, the themes I find that I explore the most are female characters. So that's definitely a thing in all of my movies. My feature film, The Birdwatcher, was actually based on a personal story. It was loosely based on my sister, who had cancer, and so that sort of propelled me into that story. And then most of my stories are also about underdog characters. Like I really love the character who has to fight for things and who has to prove herself. And I guess I'm a bit like that. Like I was always a bit of an underdog. I was the person who wasn't really going to amount to anything or do anything because I didn't have much in the way of any big goals in my life early on, But now I see it, like over time you can see that you've developed or I've developed a real sort of style in my writing, and that I really love to explore families. That's definitely in all of the writing that I do. I have a short film called OMG that you can, there's a link on my website, and it's about a teenager. And I have other, I recently developed a series with CBC, and that was based at a high school, so lots of teen characters as well. And I'm also writing on a couple of TV series. They're not like happening yet, but we're developing them, and they both have like younger protagonists in them. So I find that I keep tapping into that sort of younger protagonist, like younger and younger every year. Kyra starts out 12. But I really do like those underdog characters. And I think that when you find those kinds of things, like it's not so much that you're just retelling the same story. It's just that I think when writers tend to do that, like write about family or certain types of characters, they've just found their groove and they've got a lot to say on that subject. So I don't think it's a thing that writers need to pull away from, like, oh, I have to do something completely different to prove that I'm a writer of merit, that I can go and try different subject matter. So, but I do kind of, like in my process, I find that I do have a lot of ideas, so I just tend to just like write them all down as much, and then I let them kind of rise up. And when I'm teaching screenwriting, I often tell my students that you have to be the one that loves this baby, that loves your work, that loves this particular concept you're working on, because you're maybe the only one who's going to be in love with it until it's a fully formed human being. And if you don't like it, if you're just kind of like, well, it's a good idea, somebody might like it, I'll go with it. Like, I don't think that it has the longevity. And I think for myself, especially, like, I need to get really invested in the characters, and it's almost like you come to live their lives in a way, you like even Kyra at 12, like I just love being her when I write. I feel like I'm way back in this other fantasy world, and it's a lot of fun.
I really love that people are getting to hear your story about that you didn't really see yourself as a writer. And, there wasn't this, there is this thought process out there for creative people that, you've got it in you when you're born. You've got this 5-year-old who's doing these amazing things. And then all these writers that really do want to write, and they're adult, or they're, they can be any age. And those little things get in the way. It stops them from getting rolling. They'll see another little video about an author that was successful at, 12. And their confidence gets a little bit shaken and they stop. So you're an inspiration here, what you're sharing with us. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. I'm curious. So this is a trilogy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And have you got the whole trilogy kind of planned out, or are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? Like, what's you?
I'm a huge plotter. I love structure and plot, and I think it really comes from I wrote a whole bunch of about 7 TV movies that were thrillers. Mm-hmm. So thrillers like murder mystery kind of thing. And for those types of movies, you really need to have the structure. You need a clue path. You need to have cause and effect. And I found that I just really, for some reason, it's one of my strengths is to like definitely write out that plot. Sometimes it's just like I don't sit down and go, okay, chapter 15 is going to be this. It's more that I have all those kind of plot points and major scenes thought out, and the ending, I always have the ending and know what that's going to be. But then within the chapter, I let myself explore what's going to happen and how it's said. But I mean, I'm not super stringent, although sometimes I'll get like, oh my God, this is the most brilliant idea. I have to work it in. And then it totally takes me off my plan. And then you kind of wrestle with it, because you go, do I keep this idea and lose all the plot like for the next 10 chapters? Mm-hmm. Or do I have to hit backspace and cut and paste, or get that thing out of there and just let that good idea go to the wayside? And sometimes you have to make those decisions, that you because I don't like to get painted into a corner, and then I'm like, how do I get out of here? So I am a bit linear in that sense, that I really do like it. It's funny, I picked up the book today and I was like, oh, what do I have at the back of the book? I can't remember what I said. And I noticed that I said, book 2 comes out in the spring of 2021. I was like, wow, that was very optimistic of me, because this just came out in October 2020. But the good news is that I have written book 2. So it's really a first draft, but it's most of the plot is there. There's a couple of just one sort of big climactic scene I haven't finished yet. And I have and I have book 3 sort of in a rough synopsis as well. I also have an idea. I don't know if I'll get this far, but I've got an idea for a prequel that would see a trilogy about Kyra's parents and when they were teenagers. So it goes back into the history of the wars and Magellan, and Kyra finds out, I can tell you. Kyra finds out that her dad and the arch enemy, the rat, the leader of the Raturos, the rats, that they were friends in high school.
Oh, okay.
So the prequel trilogy, hopefully, if it happens, if I ever get to it, will focus on that. So it's a world I'm very excited about. Like I love it because it's just, I don't know, it's just so much fun to write, and it's just so different,
Mm-hmm. So when are you thinking book 2 might be out? And you can spring 2021, but the fact is, like everywhere I turn right now, people are almost forgetting 2020 existed. Let's just mess things up. So we'll just add it there.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea when that might be out?
Well, I don't, because I've actually written another book in between. Maybe I could just share it's just about to be announced. I've written a nonfiction book. Can you see it?
Oh.
Can you see? Oh, it's.
Yeah, we can see it.
Bigger. Yeah. So because I've written so many TV movies, and I often teach classes on how to write TV movies, I often have people calling me going like, how do I write TV movies? Like they're so popular in Vancouver and across Canada, like they're made for Hallmark and Lifetime and Netflix, other channels. And so writers, it's a really great way for writers to break into the industry by writing a TV movie. So I thought, well, I start putting together my notes from the classes, my screenwriting classes, and because it's an unusual structure, it's a 9-act structure. And there's not a lot online about how to write them. So I started to put notes together and give them out. And then I was like, I wonder if I could pop all this into a little booklet. And so it's happening. It's with my publisher right now. And it's going to be released in October. So we haven't actually even ta-da, here's the cover yet, but I'm giving you guys a sneak peek. And there'll be more information on my website if anybody would like to have a look at roslynmuir.com.
Yeah, and you've got the website, and I see you're on Twitter too. That would be another way to follow and really stay informed. I'm curious as could be.
Yeah, so that kind of got in the way because I was planning on, finishing the book too, but I had an opportunity with the nonfiction book. And I thought, well, I'll write 2 books at once. But of course, I didn't. Well, I sort of did. I mean, I just have finished the edits on this one, and I have gone back to book 2 of Chimeras Apprentice. So I have been juggling quite a lot. For me, the pandemic is, I know it's a tragic event, but for me, it has been, I've been quite prolific. I mean, I'm normally a very stay at home and write as much as I can between teaching. But with this, I really was kind of forced to okay, you're really staying home. You're not going to the coffee shop. You're not going, out with people. So I was able to stay home and get a lot of work done. And so now I need a vacation.
Well, I have a couple of questions, but I don't know if you're getting to see the messages we have.
Oh, I can't see them, no. Maybe there's a chat. Let me see. Is it in there?
It is on there. It's Big Apple
Oh,
Chip on YouTube is saying that how much she loves this author.
thank
And
you.
excited that you're a mature student. That's inspiring. She's also made a note about what she calls, and I also call imposter syndrome, where you don't believe you're a writer, but you are. And yeah, she's really enjoying your chat as well. I'm curious because you seem fairly there's a name for it, multi-passionate, maybe, lots of interests. And I really loved when you were chatting about, here's this new idea. Does it go in the book, or where do I go with this? I actually work with a lot of writers, and that often is a huge challenge. Is the book could be done, but this new idea and this new twist happened, and they just had to go do it. And 12 years later, the book's going to get done. What advice would you give writers who are just so many ideas to actually get their work done?
Yeah, I think I used to be like the person when I first started screenwriting. I'll tell you this little story. I think I wrote the first feature film I ever wrote. I worked on it for about 5 years. I had no other ideas. It was just like my one idea. And I went to the Vancouver Film Festival where they have like panels with writers and directors. And there was this fellow, I don't remember his name, but he was talking because he had a film in the festival. And he was like, yeah, this is my 10th feature film and I've written about 30 films. And I was just like, what? I've only got this one idea. Oh my God, I'll never finish this film. What am I doing? And so I kind of realized that, I needed to up my idea game. And so that's what I did. I kind of trained myself to just like write stuff down all the time, fill notebooks with ideas. And eventually I did become more prolific, and writing TV movies helped as well because they're very fast. Like you have to write them in a month and get them done. So I think having lots of ideas is a really good thing, but trying to funnel them is another thing. So I'd suggest that, yeah, that whole, probably already doing it, but just always just writing everything down. First thing in the morning, like there's a thing, the morning pages that comes out of the Artist's Way. It's a really great book for writers and any creative who's looking for some exercises to do and stuff. It's by Julia Cameron. So one of her things is called the morning pages, where you wake up in the morning, you don't do anything else, don't get out of bed, you just grab your book, you grab a pen, and you just write 3 pages longhand, without really thinking, without judging, just getting, like, it's like you're kind of like vomiting on the page, and you're clearing away that sort of foam off the top of the coffee cup, and you're getting into the good stuff underneath. And once you kind of can do that, clear away the fuzz, like your ideas will be have a lot more clarity. The other thing is really goal setting and just trying to stick to that. Like, my next project is I'm going to work on this, and I'm not going to work on any other project. And I'm going to structure it so that I know, what my character is doing, what my story is. And otherwise it's too easy to have that kind of monkey brain with too many ideas. And I really get that as well. Like I work on way too many projects at once, and I get, the monkey brain. So it's really forcing yourself to just like do the one project and do it well. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, it does help. And I think sometimes that creative process sometimes the ideas are almost a form of procrastinating. Like there's a fear of success too. And there's a fear of actually finishing the books.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes those ideas get in the way, and that gives you another reason to just keep rewriting, keep working on it. There's a struggle around finishing and fear that what if it goes nowhere? What if I've wasted my time? And so if you never finish it, you don't have to deal with that part.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've really got a strong kind of goal-oriented way of working with your projects.
But I also have lots of folders in my computer of, half-started things or first drafts of things that were really thin and didn't pan out. Like I lost interest in them, and that's why I go back to that. Working on that one idea that you really love and are really passionate about, because that passion can propel you through to finishing the story. And everybody's going to have folders full of ideas that didn't go anywhere, and I think that's normal. I think that's what you have to do. It's like, when you go to your closet and there's only you only wear half of the things. You tried to have a really great closet, but you only succeeded in picking 10 really nice things to wear. So
that's a really good analogy.
I just made that up.
Yeah, no, that's good. You want to jot that down and use it, keep using it. Because that's so true. That's such a perfect example of all these ideas that are hanging there. But there's certain ones that you really, really do want to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So you've got your trilogy happening, and you have, it was really brave, right? To take on a novel.
I think so. Because it kind of feels like my Achilles heel, like the, like prose and grammar. It's just the thing that I always think of, literature and you have to write like Margaret Atwood if you want to be a writer. And I don't think that's true. I think there's so many different levels of, age levels and lengths of book that you can tell your story any way you want. So the other thing I did was that I decided to self-publish it. And I never would have done it actually if it wasn't for the pandemic, because I sort of discovered that self-publishing was a thing and that there were so many people doing it. And I thought, well, why don't I try that? There's been lots of amazing books that have been found after being self-published. And I just thought, well, let's give it a try. And part of me was like I love to do new things. Like I'm really good at starting things. But after like so many months of working and doing social media and saying, hey, here's my book, it's really difficult to keep up the pace and to continue to, to get it out to people. And I think that's sort of going to be my downfall. But so I don't know if the second one's going to be self-published or not. I think that I do have a publisher who's been asking about it. So I can't say anything yet, but I may just decide to hand it over and not have to do all the hard stuff. I can't believe how much publishers actually do. It's enormous. It
is enormous. And it is for all the authors, because self-publishing can work if you want. If you're really willing to market, it can work beautifully. So, I'm often talking with writers about, really just look at the two options and one or the other. But yeah, it's the marketing that's tricky. But even when you are traditionally published, you have a fair bit of marketing that you get to do as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So we have a question. What's the next project you're excited about? This is from Big Apple Chick.
Oh boy, what is the next project? Well, I also have a co-writing partner that I write TV series with, Jude Klassen. She's a Toronto filmmaker, and so we've written a series that is, what's it called? A thriller, I guess it is, psychological thriller. And so it's just been optioned by a film company in Toronto. So we're really excited about that because hopefully, somebody's going to want it and maybe it'll get made. So that's been sort of pushing us forward. And then we just completed another TV pilot as well for a different show. And that one is also a thriller, but it's got a bit of a supernatural tone to it as well. So yeah, it's really different co-writing. I always thought that, oh, I could never do that. Like, how on earth do you organize it? And what if the person's annoying and you can't, they won't do what you want? Like, like I'm not one of those people who's really like, we're doing it my way. Like I'm quite pliable when it comes to suggestions and but I think it became bigger in my mind. And then because it was a friend of mine when we started to do it, and we're just complete opposites, but it turned out to be really successful. So I really recommend, if you are writing like TV or even feature film screenplays, is to try writing with somebody, because it's a lot of fun. And if you can find the right person, then you can, with different strands, like, because I have really strong structure skills and I really like to plot. And my friend, she's like really into character, and like she wanted like write all the dialogue before we even have like the plot worked out, kind of thing. So we have such different ways of working and different strengths that it actually works really well. So I think that was something that was kind of brave that I did, in terms of like, do I really want to try this? I might wreck my friendship, with this person.
Yeah, that's totally brave. I'm curious how you do it. So do you guys both meet and work together, or do you work on bits and back and forth on the computer? Like, what's your process for that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was in Toronto for a while, so we started when I was there, and we actually were mostly just brainstorming kind of stuff. And then I came back, and we started to work on Google Docs. So what we do is we open a Google Docs, and we start from scratch, essentially. Like, we do like a synopsis or an outline, and just really, keeping track of all of the ideas, like just firing ideas, writing them down. So we'll have these really long Google Docs full of ideas. And once it's ready to, like, once we have like a treatment, which is an expanded synopsis, it's almost like a script without the dialogue. Once we get that far, then we'll take it to the screenwriting software that we use. It's called Final Draft. And in Final Draft, there is, if you have the latest version, I think it's just on that one, Final Draft 11, there's a collaboration button that you can, so we can work on the same document. But generally what we'll do is we'll split it up. So we'll have it beat out so well that we have the entire story, and then we'll just split the script in half, and she'll write the first half and I'll write the second half. And then we'll switch. Yeah. And she can, like, because her dialogue is really great. So I can go over and fix her structural things or whatever needs, and then she'll fix my dialogue, and then we'll go through it together. We'll actually read it through. And so it's a bit of a process that just kind of developed, like, I don't know how we kind of made it up. I guess that's how people work, but that's what works for us. And we've written, I guess we've written a couple of scripts that way, and some show Bibles for TV series. And so, yeah. And we're also, when we're collaborating, we're also on the phone together.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the missing.
That's admirable that you pull it off that way and have a whole process that works for you. How long would one project take the two of you?
Well, the first one, the thriller one that we wrote, we actually pulled it together in about 2 months. And that's like a 60-page script for TV, 1 hour. Oh. And then the second one we actually wrote it as a half hour at first. And so again, that was pretty quick. I think we did it in about 6 weeks. But we recently just rewrote it into a 1 hour. We expanded everything and it works much better as a 1 hour. And so that's now been sent out to some producers for we're hoping to get some meetings soon. And it's also nice when we pitch, like, because in the film industry, you're going to pitch meetings right now. Of course, they're all on Zoom, which is great, because I don't like those in-person things so much. But we have different strings. Like, she's very chatty and she's really funny, and then I can throw in a couple of words as well. So we balance things out quite nicely in the meetings too. And then you don't feel so afraid either, because these meetings can be kind of scary.
Well, whole collaborative, working together, it really does help sometimes to have hold each other's hand in the background, right? But also accountability.
Yeah.
If you're solo and you're saying, I'm going to get this book done, by such and such a date, and you might need to use a lot of tools and tricks to make that happen. But if you're working with someone else, you're accountable to each other.
Yeah, definitely. And if you are working alone on a book, like, I highly recommend even just finding some other writers to do like a writing group where you submit pages, like every so often, however, like a chapter every 2 weeks or whatever you can manage. And then you have somebody to read it to, get a little bit of feedback. There's a lot of groups like that, small groups. If you can find other writers, I think that really helps.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I know my one book that's out there right now, it was kind of a daily meetup with a couple of people, just saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. And we'd hang out, work on it for a bit, call back, and just check in. Like, got this done and this done. And it is really good to have that kind of support.
Yeah, I think you do need support. And I think that's why, writing classes are so important as well. Like, it just gives you a framework, and you get to meet other writers, and you get some honest feedback, and it just keeps you going. It gives you a goal, something like I have to hand something in. So I'm the kind of person, even though in my early years, I hated school. But once I really got into it, like, I could be in school all the time. I could just like go to classes all the time and, not do essays or anything, do creative stuff. But I just love that kind of environment, so I recommend classes to everybody.
Yeah. So do you recommend that everyone plays in film and in fiction novels?
Well, I think
so much from both of them, right? That would.
Yeah, it's tough. I think there are people who write in both. There are people who write poetry in nonfiction, poetry and they write songs, or they write fiction. Like, it's really, you can't really say if you write one, you should go try to write something else. Like, if you love what you're writing, then just, then stay novel writing or stay screenwriting. But sometimes you get a story that kind of speaks to you and you go, I don't think I can write this as a film. It's got to be this. Or, sometimes a story shows up and it's just a short story. It's not a novel. So you kind of have to listen to it and the characters, and what's the depth of the story, and how far can you take that story, and that kind of dictates where you're going to go, like what the structure is and what the genre is going to be. I think that people should try screenwriting, though. If you've only written prose, try to write in that different format. It's quite eye-opening, and there are things that cross over for sure in both of those genres. But it's definitely fun to work in both worlds.
So if we were going to ask our viewers, or if we were going to offer some tips for our viewers on trying out screenwriting, where would you send them? What would you suggest how do they begin?
Yeah, well, I think it's good to find a class that's a beginner class. If you haven't, like, if you've never seen a screenplay before, there's lots, well, I can't say lots. A lot of the screenwriting classes that are out there are part of programs like Vancouver Film School or In Focus Film School, but there are a lot of classes online, and there's also a lot of resources. Like you can kind of be self-taught. You can get some books. You could download some scripts. You know, every year the Academy Award-winning films, they release all those scripts, and you can download them and read them. And I think reading scripts is the best way to learn how to write a script. But a class is really helpful as well. And so it's just a matter of finding that class that's available to you, because there's not a lot of them. A place like Women in Film in Vancouver, they're a really good resource for screenwriting, like for they often advertise classes for people, and there's lots of film groups around as well, whether they're online or someday in person. You know, most bigger cities or bigger towns will have some sort of like a film society even, or film festivals often will offer things.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, we do have locally as well. Anything else you want to touch on that you might not have? And if not, would you be interested in just a couple minutes reading a bit more of your book or anything?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of
wherever you'd like to go with this would be great with us.
Well, I actually had another book that I could read from, just because I don't know if you know this book. Like I love books. My writing. Yeah. Do you know this one?
I do. Yes, that'd be lovely if you.
Yeah, so Ray Bradbury, Zen and the Art of Writing. It's very old school. I mean, you know, he wrote in the early part of the 20th century, 20th century, and wrote one of my favorite stories growing up. When I was, I guess, about 8 or 9, maybe 9. One day, my dad came home with this stack of, like a big stack of old books, dusty, like. He had found them, I don't know, somebody had given them, said, oh, you've got kids, here's some books. And it was all collection, it was a collection of science fiction stories. So it had like War of the Worlds in it, and Martian Chronicles, and just all of these short stories from all of these male writers, but well-known writers. And I was the only one who wanted to read them. And so they became my treasures. Like I just read them over and over again. And so science fiction is now like my most favorite genre to watch. Like that's just the one that I love. I can't write it. I haven't really ever wanted to write it, I think, because it's like one of those things where, you know, when it's the favorite thing you have. Anyway, so Ray Bradbury, Martian Chronicles was a huge, oops, I just took my bookmark out and lost my spot. So there was so it's just full of chapters of like his writing and different sort of things. Like he talks about just the joy of writing and how he became a writer. And so if you don't mind, I'll just write a little bit. So the chapter is called Run Fast, Stand Still, or The Thing at the Top of the Stairs, or New Ghosts from Old Mines. Run fast, stand still. This, the lesson from lizards for all writers. Observe almost any survival creature you see the same. Jump, run, freeze. In the ability to flick like an eyelash, crack like a whip, vanish like steam, here this instant, gone the next, life teems the earth. And when that life is not rushing to escape, it is playing statues to do the same. See the hummingbird, there, not there. As thought arises and blinks off, so this thing of summer vapor, the clearing of a cosmic throat, the fall of a leaf. And where it was, a whisper. What can we writers learn from lizards, lift from birds? In quickness is truth. The faster you blurt, the more swiftly you write, the more honest you are. In hesitation is thought. In delay comes the effort for a style, instead of heaping upon the truth, which is the only style worth dead falling or tiger trapping. In between the scurries and flights, what? Be a chameleon. Ink blend, chromosome change with the landscape. Be a pet rock, lie with the dust. Rest in the rainwater in the filled barrel by the drain spout, out by your grandparents' window long ago. Be dandelion wine in the ketchup bottle, capped and placed with an inked description. June morn, first day of summer, 1923. Summer, 1926, fireworks night, 1927, last day of summer, last day of the dandelions, October 1st. And out of all of this, wind up with your first success as a writer. So the thing about that got me was just that whole idea of the run fast, stay still, how the thoughts and what the earlier question was, like, what do you do with all those thoughts? And it's almost like you're in a race to get things on the page and to sort of outrun your mind, because your mind is always stopping you and putting things in your way. So that is kind of a thing that I really like about Ray Bradbury, is that he has just those little bits of wisdom throughout the book. And like I said, some of it's a little bit dated. You know, obviously he grew up in the 20s or way back when.
You know, creative process is the creative process, right? And
yeah.
Any writer could look at those pages and go, and actually even feel relief, part of it, going, oh yeah, right. Other people understand this. Oh, this is a way past it, kind of thing.
Yeah, reading what other writers go through is such a tonic. It just, it gives you a sense that, oh, okay, I'm not alone, and I'm not the only person making mistakes and having problems and not knowing how to solve character problems or plot problems. Like, it's just, that's the job. Making mistakes is the job, and you got to cut yourself some slack and just allow yourself to just make mistakes, write crap. I always have, like, my first draft of anything is just, I call it the crap draft. Like, I just want to get it done, because then you've got something to edit, you've got something to improve on. But if you can't get that draft out, then you don't have anything. So you've got to race away from your brain, get everything out, and then you can work on it. Then you get something to edit and work on.
Right. Yeah. Oh, this has been great. This has been really lovely.
Oh, it's been lovely to talk to you. I
Yeah.
hope I haven't rabbited on too much.
No, there's so much good information, so much that I know the writers are going to love. Anyone that's, writers, readers, they're going to really enjoy hearing what you have to say in your process, and some wonderful resources. And I really enjoyed hearing you read. And I know I'm going to get the book.
In the library.
You have a Twitter account. You do have your website, and it's yourname.com, right?
Yeah. And I have an Instagram account, and it's just Muir. Oh, it's the same as the Twitter. Okay. And I've actually, there is a Chimeras Apprentice TikTok with no videos on it, but I'm collecting people there for the day that I have the time to actually make a TikTok video.
Oh, good. Okay, that's great. And Big Apple Chick has just posted and said, thank you for a wonderful, inspiring hour. And I agree. And so thank you. And thank you to our Thompson-Nicola Library and to the Kamloops Writers Society for sponsoring these events, but especially it was just a really wonderful hour. So thank you so much, Roslyn.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciated it.
All right.
Okay, take care.
You too. Bye. Bye.